This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Nancy Benson. This week, what happens when people get hit by a foul ball at a baseball game?
It's not uncommon today to see a foul ball flying into the stands at 100 miles per hour. If you're sitting about 60 feet away from home plate and the ball's hit 110 miles an hour at you, you've got less than a half second to react.
The baseball rule, when Radio Health Journal returns. I'm Nancy Benson, host of Radio Health Journal. If you enjoy Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show. Here's a preview of what they're covering on Viewpoints this week.
This week on Viewpoints.
The level of creativity and the heart and soul that many of these individuals bring to their work is remarkable.
Urban farming and gardening. Creating jobs for and helping to feed those in need. Then,
an illustrated history of weather from 4.5 billion years ago to today in 100 pages.
These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Viewpoints on your favorite radio station, iTunes and Stitcher. Serious baseball fans often wait until June to assess how good their team really is. Should you get tickets for the pennant race or start saying, wait till next year? Last season, nearly 73 million people cheered their favorites at Major League games, but some of them went home with an unwanted souvenir, an injury after being struck with a foul ball.
The Boston Red Sox did a study, and they found that about 36 to 53 Boston spectators were injured every year.
That's sports attorney Eldon Ham, who teaches the subject at Chicago-Kent College of Law. He says if the Red Sox survey is extrapolated across all 30 major league teams, it means about 1,500 fans are hurt each year.
There are foul balls, and there are also home run balls, right? Most people think about the foul balls, but people have to get out of the way of home run balls at the other end of the field, and there are bats flying into the stands, and uniquely, shards of bats.
Not quite 50 times per game on average, a foul ball goes into the stands at a major league game. Sometimes it's a lazy bloop that falls harmlessly. But more than ever these days, it may be a rocket that can injure someone badly.
Over the last 50 or so years, but especially over the last 25 years or so, MLB, new ballparks have been constructed. They've continued to put fans closer and closer and closer to the field.
That's Nathaniel Groh, Associate Professor of Business Law and Ethics at the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. He's studied the laws that protect fans and often don't protect them at Major League Baseball games.
Our data showed that on average, fans are sitting about 20% closer to the playing field today than they were, again, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And so 20% might not sound like a huge difference, but when it comes to reaction time and you're dealing with, potentially tenths of a second, that can be a pretty big difference. And then the other factor is just that players are throwing the ball harder, that, they're better conditioned today. They tend to be stronger than they were 80 years ago. And so you've got faster pitch speeds. That in turn has led to faster foul balls flying into the stands. Players are swinging the bats harder too. And so it's not uncommon today to see a foul ball flying into the stands at 100, 110, even faster, miles per hour. We did the basic math, and it turns out that if you're sitting about 60 feet away from home plate and the ball's hit 110 miles an hour at you, you've got less than a half second to react.
But if you're hit by a foul ball and break a bone or need other medical treatment as a result, don't expect the team to help pay for it. They're protected by what's called the baseball rule, established by the courts back in 1912.
As long as a team takes minimal precautions to protect its fans from injury, and they've defined that to mean putting a net up immediately behind home plate, around the backstop area, then basically the team will be found to not be liable for any injuries, and the courts usually say that fans assume the risk of their own injury, that the danger of a bat or ball flying into the stands is obvious to the average fan, and therefore you have to assume the risk of liability. And if you end up being the unlucky one who gets hurt, that means you're going to have to foot all your own medical bills, etc.
You pretty much assume the risk of possibility of getting injured, and so you have to have a heads up and be aware of your surroundings. At least half the states, if not more than half, recognize it, and some states also have tried to codify it with a state statute. Basically, it says that if you have some netting up, where people could conceivably sit behind it, then you're not liable for things that happen outside the netting, unless your netting itself is defective and somebody gets hurt because there's a giant hole in it and the ball goes through. But more or less, the baseball rule says that the fans are there at their own risk because they can assess the risk.
Under the baseball rule, judges have declared that kids as young as 5 can assess their own risk and so can't sue teams for injuries. Suits against individual players have been thrown out as well. But Ham isn't sure that anyone can really assess the risk.
The one that was a reasonably famous case in Boston, I think it was 1998, she got her face smashed in with a Fenway Park foul ball. She needed reconstructive surgery, the whole deal. She sued, but she lost because the court said, look, you were there at your own risk. Her experts said that she had 1 second to assess the risk and get out of the way of the screaming foul ball that found her. And so it almost reminds me of the inherently dangerous products. You know, you buy a chainsaw and it's inherently dangerous, and there's more responsibility that goes with it in terms of creating guards to hold it and safety features and all. And so to tell ordinary fans, especially fans that have children with them or elderly people or whatever, you go to the ballpark completely at your own risk.
However, things may be changing. Analytics prove that baseballs routinely come off the bat at more than 100 miles per hour. So owners may realize there's no way fans sitting close can really protect themselves. And now an exception to the baseball rule is more common than ever as well: distraction.
The ballparks do everything they can to distract the fans, meaning entertain the fans, get them to watch something or get engaged in something besides the game. So between pitches, a lot of stuff goes on. Or somebody hits a home run, the fireworks go off, right? Or you might have girls coming by throwing shirts into the stands. You got hot dog vendors trying to sell you something. There's a lot going on to attract your attention. And if you are distracted and you can't watch out for yourself, then that actually is an exception to the baseball rule. So distract the fan, hurt the fan, you might be liable.
This year, for the first time, all 30 major league teams have extended netting at least to the far end of each dugout. So many more fans will be protected in areas where there's really no time to react. And while Groh wants the baseball rule abolished in the majors, what about at lower levels of play? The minors, college, and high school ball, and even Little League. The rule applies there, too.
I do think that the calculus might change a little bit. There's concerns about, that the ball isn't usually going to be traveling quite as fast at a Little League game as it is at a Major League game. You've also just got the concerns of, one lawsuit here could literally, bankrupt the local recreational fund and might deprive, not just fans, but also participants of recreational opportunities. So the same logic may hold true at a recreational amateur level, but the concerns might be different, and there might be more of a justification for courts to hold on to this traditional baseball rule in those local level amateur settings.
A lot of parents have gotten used to watching Little League games through a chain link fence, and the majors are getting to be more that way too. The netting may be easier to see through, but it's a little harder these days to come home with a game-played baseball as a souvenir. Our production director is Sean Waldron. I'm Nancy Benson.
Radio Health Journal returns in just a moment.
Medical notes this week. Polycystic ovary syndrome affects up to 1 in 5 women, yet the cause has been a mystery. Now researchers think they may have found it, and it may all start before a woman is even born. A study on mice in the journal Nature Medicine finds that when female fetuses are exposed to too much of what's called anti-Mullerian hormone in the womb, it sets up a cascade of events that occur after puberty. Researchers say the hormone triggers brain cells to overproduce testosterone, a hallmark of polycystic ovary syndrome. Researchers were able to reverse PCOS with an IVF hormone-regulating drug. Yet another study carries a strong implication that playing tackle football at a young age is especially dangerous for brain health. The study in the Annals of Neurology finds that people who began tackle football before age 12 experienced cognitive, behavior, and mood symptoms an average of 13 years earlier than those who started playing at age 12 or later. Cognitive and mood problems came about 2.5 years sooner for every year under age 12 a person started to play. And finally, scientists may have finally come up with an antidote for hangovers. Researchers at UCLA say they've developed a combination of 3 enzymes normally found in the liver that cut the blood alcohol level of inebriated mice by 45% in 4 hours compared to mice that didn't receive the enzymes. Scientists say the enzymes could also help prevent alcohol poisoning. Human tests could be as little as a year away. And that's Medical Notes this week. More in a moment.
Thank you for listening to Radio Health Journal, a production of MediaTrax Communications. If you enjoyed this week's show, please leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. You can find more Radio Health Journal stories about health, science, and technology on iTunes, Stitcher, and at radiohealthjournal.net.